I think it's good to let that run for like 12 seconds. The future's gonna be just as weird as now is. I promise. The future's gonna be absurd as the past. Be sure of that. One more time. The future's gonna be just as weird as now is. I promise. The future's gonna be absurd as the past. Be sure of that. The future's gonna be just as weird as now is. So who bears the burden? Who do we elect? Who is drafted to do the heavy lifting of reality?
Man, that is such a good question, because it's like there's so many different, but just like immediately hearing that question, there's so many different ways you could begin to tackle that question. Because it's like, first of all, it's whoever steps up, you know, like for better or for worse, it's whoever steps up.
So what place?
So, well, it's like for instance, you know, who takes the burden for the last 4 years? It was Donald Trump, because that's who stood up. And that's who did it. And so ultimately, whoever shares the burden is whoever stands the fuck up and decides to do it.
Whoa, buddy.
And so you have to decide whether you're going to do it or you're going to let someone else like him do it.
Let's define. We need to define the question, because that is an immensely controversial statement. Okay, we got to dial in this question. What is the burden? So in your case, you're saying being the president, that's like, who's gonna have their hands on the levers in the control room that decide really big, important shit, because those decisions are fucking immensely, like, that's what I think a lot of us agree we don't want, is like, don't put me in a position where I'm responsible for these big, fucking huge, almost impossible to not do something that gets a bunch of people suffered and dead. You know,
but that's the whole problem, is the more we don't want to do that, the more you'll get bad people to do it for you.
I think that's what we're fucking around and finding out. Yeah.
Because all the good people are like, oh, that's too much. I don't want to do that. That would be, I'm not really one of those guys. That's a weird thing. I don't know. I don't want to do that. All the people that don't care about that stuff would be like, I'll do it.
Yeah. I'm getting increasingly frustrated, and I have moments where my inner monologue is furious with that exact thing, and I'm like the most clear perpetrator of it that I've ever known of. Not in the sense that I'm like have the most potential and potency to like save the world, but I'm not stepping up to the plate, but like I'm uniquely aware of the things I don't do because I don't want responsibility, right?
Yep.
We all are that. So, you know, I think everybody knows that there's something in their life where if they took, like, just say the energy that we tend to put into criticizing the people who are fucking it up, or the ones who suck, or, you know, whether it's the reptilians or the New World Order agenda, you know, things like that. It's like, if we just reallocated the criticism and fury and hatred towards like something in our lives where it's like, okay, this family member is now experiencing me showing up in a more, you know, loving and encouraging way, and now we got them more activated in the world. Like, if I know it's becoming a cliche, and I think that's a good thing when something becomes a cliche, but if we did more of the, I see a problem, okay, where in my little humble reality can I just do a tiny something that, because you see it, there's things in that category, right? Like something happens that's a huge, big deal, like on the geopolitical stage. There's usually something that's that's some sort of micro metaphor that you can do in your life. Like a big general one is just like, there's so much hate in the world. You know, there's so much misery, there's so much suffering, there's so much coldness and apathy. All right, the bell has rung. It is now 6 a.m. in my Groundhog's Day experience. How am I going to be a little kinder and a little nicer in my tiny little world, you know?
And I think, so that kind of got me curious, is like, what stops people from thinking that way? Because it seems like once you adopt that mentality, it seems pretty obvious. It seems like that's obviously what you should do. But like up until the moment when basically like Jordan Peterson told me to do that, it had never occurred to me. You know, like there was, I mean, I guess to a certain degree it did, but not really in the way that we're talking about. So what is it that stops people from thinking that way? Why don't we feel connected to our problems or the problems of the world in any kind of meaningful way that leads us to naturally want to try and solve them to the degree that we can?
I think one thing is that a lot of us haven't had someone who communicated that value or that mechanism, that reflex in the way that for you, Jordan Peterson was a voice that you apparently were open enough to, and then that you actually gave a thorough listen to and let it hit you in a way that must have been uncomfortable at first.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the ways that guy comes at things is like, you're fucking it up. You're fucking up, you little weasel. Listen, bucko.
That's specifically what I love about him.
Yeah, that is what I needed to hear. I was like, really, I had so, and not just from him, but I remember when I first found him, it was I thought he was hilarious. I thought it's like, look at this guy being so serious, and it's like, and there's this one where he's like in a lecture hall at University of Toronto, and it's just so funny that it's like this in the round, and this guy's just losing his mind. I look back at that and be like, okay, there's a good amount of that I agree with. A lot of it too that is like a hammer where a scalpel would have been better in my opinion, sort of thing. It's like, but the thing, your question of why don't people, get that message, because a lot of us ain't about to hear it from anyone who looks or talks like him. So I think that effort of having it being said in different ways, there's definitely, and it's not just the identity thing. It's fucking change, do better. Like we talk about all the time about how when that comes from the left to the right in America, people feel shamed and judged, and they're like, fuck you, whatever this person is saying, I'm not giving them an ear because you're just shaming me. You're just telling me I'm not doing enough. So that's one.
That's fucking. So how, because I do think about that a lot of the time, it's like, I think about this interesting thing, like specifically talking about Jordan Peterson, because I've been getting kind of back into him, is like, because his whole thing is taking up responsibility and all that sort of stuff. Like he's kind of the champion for that. And it is interesting to me that because of the packaging that comes in, that would turn off so many people. But at the same time, like, I'm getting curious, like, what are some other versions that would work?
Well, I in my project that is a long-term project that started when I first just started having thought, like, oh man, like I could have like a family-friendly segment of my show where if I look around and the situation that I'm in is one where it would be advantageous or like required to not be talking, so much fucking, fuck this and clitori that and fucking, well, I don't know if clitori is necessarily profane. Depends on what space you're in. I remember this one time.
Fair enough.
Yeah, just the usual the sex, drugs, and profanity and fucking, anywho, I just like was like, there could be a way for me to not be compromising too much sincerity, authenticity, honesty, whatever, and still be on brand message wise, but just clean it up or present it. And then I found Fractal the Magical Turtle, and now I'm like, I'm always thinking about, I'm not really, the rubber isn't hitting the road so much right now in 2020, though I'm gearing up, but I want to find ways to, in the most gentle way, in the most, to infer that the things in your life, that the problems in your life can and will get better if you look at them and put effort into them, and that you have a shell, and it's okay to go into your shell when you feel overwhelmed, by the burden of reality. But if when you are ready to come out of your shell and look at that problem and maybe feel uncomfortable for a bit, things will get better. And the big part, it is really upon you. It is totally your responsibility to do, sort of thing.
I genuinely wonder, and it's not to like invalidate or anything like that, but I genuinely do wonder how many people that would work for, because it so didn't for me. And it didn't for me in a way that like that would have never, ever, ever worked for me. And so like the idea that that would work is so foreign to me that it's got me actually wondering like if that would do it. Because like if I really think about it, like the stuff that generally gets people to change like isn't nice, and it isn't pleasant, and it isn't soft, and it isn't gentle. It's usually a breakup, or your entire psyche falling apart, or fucking up so bad you lost your job, or something really cataclysmic is generally what gets people to really wake up and be like, holy fuck, this isn't working anymore. Like, I got to do something different. And so I'm wondering, like, the softer approach I think would work for somebody who's already made that initial shift. But in order to get somebody to have that breakaway from their baseline reality into something new, like I think it takes like something cataclysmic.
Well, okay. So if it's a child just starting to learn things, and you're just like you're inferring these things through their friend that is a magical turtle, I don't think you need to hit them with the cataclysm necessarily. But you're talking about adults, so you're talking
I'm talking about adults.
Okay, I am in agreement that for me, like definitely for me, like I don't think that I would have gotten so sure and so bone deep, like, yeah, not just certain, but like I need to apply this or things will continue to be, undesirable all the way to hellish for me.
I need my life on the line. That's what it took for me, is I needed to be looking death in the eye for me to finally be like, okay, I got to do something different.
Yeah, I needed to look at several years where there was a painful, obvious, like sure that my experience was at the very least not as good as it could have been, and it was fucking totally my fault for not putting in enough elbow grease. But that it's not just the elbow grease. It's not like just the fucking the fuck mustard that you fucking the effort that you put. It is if you don't have a felt sense that your problems will not sublimate and your dreams will not come true unless you face it and do it. Yeah, that's the biggest thing. I think that's the biggest thing is like knowing that it ain't coming down the pipeline. It is, there will, and sometimes little miracle things seem like miracles, but they're always, even on a metaphysical level, it always seems like you have to sow a seed. You have to sow a seed. You probably have to garden it and water it for fucking over the course of years too to get the really big payoffs. But yeah, you have to know it's coming from you.
So yeah. But the other thing about it is like the reason I think the more Petersonian approach is important is because in this context of like who's going to take on the responsibility right now, the answer is almost nobody. Like right now, the main cultural theme is tear it all down and make the government do it for us. Like that's the cultural theme of the new generation. And so I think it becomes applicable for somebody like Peterson to show up and be like, hey, like yell through the stuff and be like, hey, no, like it's you. You have to take responsibility for the goddamn thing. Like you, as your most integrated, most aligned towards your highest goals and highest values, like that is the version of you that will save us from ourselves, save yourself from yourself. It is not and just tearing down all the things that you don't like and implementing these things that will just basically have everybody do things for you.
Okay, I gotta do the thing in response to that.
Yeah, do it.
Where I come from a perspective that is not one that I own or identify with so much anymore, but
Okay.
So with particularly you're talking saying Jordan Peterson's message and like rubric in terms of bearing the burden of the world, this is where we really gotta say, like, what plate are you asking people to step up to? Because that of improving your life, your psyche, cleaning your room, and that of like helping to heal the wounds or untie the knot of racism in America, say, like that's not a thing that he's stumping for specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and I might agree that even that is like not, it still rings true that if you personally want your will to be done in this world of like helping with that, the levers that are available to you are probably around you in your life. And having this idea that you're going to go and you're going to burn down the fucking Washington DC, and that out of the ashes of that will come this better world that you want. Like, but I think a lot of folks hear that and they're like, you're telling me to take the eye off the ball of the big, difficult, and sometimes socio-political, but just huge things that require mass movements, that require us to like come to agreements about things and like get in the streets. That some like there's straight up folks who will say that cleaning your room is a thing that can only happen from a position of privilege.
Somebody would say that cleaning your room can only happen from a position of privilege.
Yeah, well, one, having a room, if you're talking literally, but the metaphor of clean your room, figure yourself out, work on your heart, your psyche, your spirituality, your relationships, your career stuff, that's always where you direct your energy. Like,
but that's like how you get out of not having privilege. That's why it's like the Ouroboros thing, because this is where it gets confusing for me, because it's like those are the things that predictably get people out of poverty and get people out of those really bad scenarios, is taking responsibility for themselves and getting out of it. Like pretty much any person who's gone from not a lot of money to a lot of money, or being dead broke to having a lot of money, will tell you that's how they did it. Every single one of them, for the most part. I'd be willing to bet like 99% of them. And so this is what I'm talking about, where like it's this question of like who's going to bear the responsibility, but then you tell people what's required in order to bear the responsibility, and then they tell you that that's based in privilege. And it's like, nope, people with way worse situations than you have done way worse with these way more with these exact same ideas.
Yeah, well, one of the ways in which the I don't want to say privilege argument, but when somebody's saying like, because you have certain luxuries or lack of certain problems in your life, that it is upon you to shoulder more of the burden of the societal problems, that seems cogent to me. It just doesn't seem very kind, or like it's going to like catch on in a good way, because I personally think that whenever I have observed that when you shame somebody into action, those aren't the good actions.
No, for sure. And I can kind of see how like the more Peterson approach would be construed as shamey. But I think he more tries to convey like the dire consequences of like not taking this up. And I think that's where he's really coming from, but it can easily come off as shame. And those are the things that I want people to know, is like the dire consequences of not taking it on yourself. Like, it's fine if you don't want to take it on yourself. Like, that's totally okay. It's not for everybody, but to know that for you to abdicate your own personal responsibility for whatever reason it might be, basically what you're doing is you're taking the reins and you're handing them to whoever. And like, that isn't kind, and that isn't nice, and that isn't a fair thing to say, but that's reality. And that's one of the interesting things. It's like, we talk about fairness a lot, and like it's weird because the world isn't fair, but we've evolved to a certain degree where we've got civilization, we've got comforts, and we've got luxuries, and we've grown accustomed to a certain level of comfort. And so we start to think that the world should be fair and the world should be pleasant and the world should be good, but it just isn't. Like it isn't. Like the world is not a fair place. If you're in the wrong place at the wrong time in the ocean, you just get fucking killed. And that's really all there is to it.
Yeah, there being those amongst us and a growing signal for the desire to try to get it as close to fairness. Though there's the huge disagreement about that, about equity of outcome versus equity of opportunity. But man, you invoked Jordan Peterson and are now taking. I feel the need to go in the direction of Christian mysticism, like earlier than I wanted to or expected in this conversation. But I guess we're going there now. So bearing.
For me, that's the only thing in there. Like when we ask about who's going to take responsibility, who's going to bear the burden, it's going to be me. And it better damn well be you. Because if it's not you, then who is it? And that's a very Western idea. It's a very Christian idea. And at the same time, I can't think of a better one. Because it's literally I do it or someone else does it. Like,
yeah, so you're saying that it is an elemental truth of reality that if you perceive a burden to bear, a thing in this world that needs a change in, then to even become aware of that is to know that it's upon you to either make some moves, which with whatever resources and position you have in your life, or you might as well kind of turn away from you might avert your eyes from that particular elephant graveyard because it ain't changing without you. Would you say that?
Yeah, I would say, and there's varying degrees, right? Because there's a lot of problems like mental health, integrating the collective shadow, all those sorts of things. Those are the things I care about the most. So that's what I spend the most of my time on. Now, there's other things that I care about that I spend a lesser degree of time on. But to those lesser things, I simply try and acknowledge where I'm responsible for perpetuating certain cycles and try and see if I can at least get myself off that hamster wheel. And as long as I'm not perpetuating a thing, then that soothes my conscience enough. Where it's like I can really only dedicate myself, my whole life, I can dedicate myself to one problem. And then I can give a decent amount of effort to maybe like one or two, maybe three other problems on the side, as well as like creative things just to keep me happy. So it's like that's essentially the capacity of a human being. Mm-hmm. Somebody who has the desire to do all this stuff. But from there, you can at least not perpetuate things.
Do you ever have this this sort of ominous, but also I think that it's can be optimistic if you intend to do something about it, observation where it seems like solipsism checks out, that reality is totally a projection, if you want to call it, or like just a fractal, like that it is your psyche worldified pretty much.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, but I think there's degrees to that. Like solipsism is like, I don't know what you'd have to do in order to get yourself, like shoehorn yourself into that reality. That sounds terrifying to me.
Oh,
but
God.
Doesn't it? It's terrifying to me. The idea that somebody could actually put themselves in that perspective and believe it for a second. Like it gives me the willies. But I think there's something to it in like solipsism is like, it's just, we're all doing that. You know, it's like you're generating your reality and I'm generating my reality. And like whatever we have here is what happens when all of those things that we're generating come together.
Agreed.
This is the middle ground. But as far as like who takes responsibility, like, cause this is why you have to go into like I just don't know another answer. Cause it's if it's not me, it's some other schmuck and I don't trust some other schmuck. I need it to be me because I trust me. And I need it to be good people that I know because I know them and I love them and I care about them and I trust them. And we just, I don't know, man. Like, I don't think we can live in a world anymore where people are abdicating responsibility. I just don't, I think that time has passed.
So, two big things.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree in regards to like you and I think that like I think that we've found our lane, and then it's always noble or pragmatic to be like seeing if you can expand that lane. But also I've made some, okay, I'm going too far on the tangent of that. Like for some of us, or for all of us, you find somewhere where you can be effective, where you actually have skills, perhaps resources, or just like it's possible that you'll come into resources to be able to take it to a higher level. But a big question and which is why I wanted to have this conversation, ask this question: who shoulders the burdens of reality? Is, don't you think there's some people who it's like, because they're not gonna do anything about like, something huge, like fucking, I don't think my mom needs to know about the pedophile rings. I don't think
mind everything.
Yeah, man. I think that there's some of us amongst us who we suck at conflict, and I don't think that they should get better at conflict. I don't think the sweethearts of the world need to learn to fucking to be able to punish the wicked. I think
so this is where we get into the realm of some dicey topics like traditional masculinity. Because if you are a fan of traditional masculinity the way I am, it falls onto the men to take up that burden so that our mothers and our wives and our sisters and our daughters don't have to.
So that's the like that you're talking classic masculinity, but like I think that there's a way to not gender that. It's like that falls
for sure. Yeah,
on
like
the masculine strong.
Yeah, for sure. You could do that. There are plenty of women that would want to do that too. And they should be allowed to, absolutely. But I think for the most part, men tend to be more masculine. So it's just like, as a numbers game, you're probably going to get more dudes doing it.
Well, I would just say that we have to define classic like archetypal masculinity. But I would say that for things like that, that's one of the things that I think about a lot. It's like there's some of these punishments that kind of need to happen before we can call this society anything but fucking pretty sick. As in, not like the whole society is sick, but like there is an illness that must be addressed. That tumor is not going away. And for things like the overwhelming corruption, but like particularly, let's say that like apparently it is apparent now, and I used to think that it was fantastically sinister when people told me about like Jeffrey Epstein and the island. I would say like that is way too sinister. And you're telling me that there's like flight logs of like all these people who are big in politics and celebrities. It's like that is too fantastically evil. No.
Mm-hmm. I remember you said that to me on this show not even that long ago.
I thought it was too fucking, and that goes to show I wouldn't call myself a naive person, but like I am, my general makeup doesn't seem to be that tuned to figuring out who needs to get fucked up and fucking them up.
Mm-hmm.
That's
why I don't really care if what the world requires of you makes you uncomfortable. Like, to whoever, I'm not saying you, but if what the world requires of you makes you uncomfortable, then fucking deal with that. It's not the world's job to require less of you. It's your job to become somebody who can take on what the world requires of you.
But the world it really seems to me, I won't make this a declarative statement, though it looks pretty clear to me that the world needs both punishers and enforcers who are kind and strong and able to do some shit that I get trembly just thinking about it.
Well, that's why, like, so my theme recently that I started working with the last couple of days is,
I didn't say the second part.
Oh, I didn't know you had a second part. My bad.
Oh, that it needs both people who are like kind and I mean kind through strength and in some extreme cases aggression, and then it needs love, articulated love, like to go out and try to spread the knee-jerk reaction to work to understand and be in unity and harmonize, other than to like it's bad, kill it. I mean, but there's those extreme examples where it's just like, what the fuck? Anyway, carry on.
No, I agree with you. And that's why this theme I've been kind of working with in myself recently is integrating this archetype of the monster. You know, like I was listening to, I don't know if, do you ever listen to Akira the Dawn, the guy that makes that meaning wave stuff?
I haven't heard much else from him, but that is a very funny song. Yes.
Yeah. So I was listening to both of his Jordan Peterson albums, or two of his Jordan Peterson albums yesterday, and he was talking about this idea of being monstrous. And I was thinking about it recently, and I was like, you know what? I've been kind of shying away from that lately. And after I've been laying into it, it's just like, that really is what's required of us, you know, because it's like, if I'm going to, like, this is a really stupid example, but I just started moderating like a Facebook shitposting transformational group. And if somebody acts in a way that I don't like, it's like, I need to be an asshole to this person, not necessarily an asshole, but I need to run the risk of hurting their feelings and be seen as the asshole bad guy for what is required to keep my group safe. And just like with my family, if somebody were to mess with my family, I need the internal capacity to tear the throat out of that son of a bitch to make sure that either my niece or my nephew or my girlfriend or my mother is not harmed. And I need to make sure that that is readily available at a moment's notice. And in my opinion, those are the people who are capable of bearing the burden. And those people will make everybody who doesn't want to rise to those things extremely uncomfortable. And those types of people will make everybody who is too afraid to rise to that level feel like this person is bad and that they're dangerous and they may want to come after them. But at the end of the day, these are the people that will take care and provide for and take care of everybody else here and make sure that they're safe. And so and Nietzsche outlined this really well in his distinction between there's like master morality and slave morality, and which is basically just like those who reach for greatness and those who don't. The ones who reach for greatness have a completely different sense of morality, right? Like for me, morality is like, I will tear you apart if you try and hurt my family. Whereas for somebody who's afraid of that side of themselves, they'd be like, I'd rather die than, you know, hurt somebody else. And like, that's great and everything, but like, what if your family's getting harmed? Like, do your principles really fucking matter then? It's like, no. And so they may look at you being willing to harm people for the sake of taking care of your family and look at you as bad and want to tear you down. And that's what fucking happens. And so there's this interesting disconnect between the people that are willing to take responsibility and willing to be the monsters and bear everything that is required, and everybody who doesn't understand them because they're too chicken shit to take up the mantle. And that is a really interesting dynamic.
So you bring a very important nuance to my general statement about some of us aren't the enforcers, which is that in specific arenas or scenarios, situations, I can be an enforcer. I don't think that I'm the one who should be hunting down and punishing the pedophiles. I want them punished. I want that shit treated like a cancer, like it needs to be like, well, also, I mean, we're not going to go into addressing the deeper issue of that. Like it needs to be, you know, addressed psychologically as far as like, you know, preventing future that. But this idea that there is this element that is so sick with power addiction that all roads lead to like sexual abuse, like that shit there. I want there to be strong, aggressive, confrontational motherfuckers going after that. But I recognize also that this is the thing that's difficult. It makes me feel like a coward sometimes, that it's like okay, I'm not born in that way where I'm like, I don't have that much like enforcer energy. I have to harness it for moments like, so here's a circumstance where I can be enforcer. Like I host this event. I don't know if host is the word. I founded this idea and this event, Nonsense Night, that happens regularly in Detroit, except now because reasons. And I would notice some situations in that where it's like, it would be a lot better for this whole community, you know, for everybody who's here, if Zachary was more ready to walk up to somebody and tell them, I heard you did this, and And in some cases, if it happens again, you're out of here. Or in
So
some cases, it's
I
like,
just want to ask real quick. And this may be a very confronting question, but how do you, first of all, do you have, and if you do, secondly, how do you either quiet or deal with the voice that would insist that it is your responsibility? Because like, what if shit hits the fan? Like, what if like don't you need to be that guy at a moment's notice? And isn't it completely unacceptable to not be?
yeah, I know. I see that now. I see it this way as, it's not just a this or that. It's like I do think that it behooves me to become more just capable of affecting violence. Just in case. I think that the keeps their sword sheathed. Somebody who is capable of being monstrous, of being aggressive, of being I don't see it as aggressive if it's in response to something, but to be able to walk up to, there's something that somebody could say, hey, this person did this, and it would be, but would it just make me feel better? Because I see things sometimes when you're the leader, like diplomatic person, it's better not for the community to see you being the one who's like bouncing somebody out of an event. Like for you and that thing, like on the internet, in the internet way, it's like, this is all communication, but it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I see that it would be advantageous for, it's like, this is the bouncer, or the Jedi security. Like, here's somebody who is totally capable in the ways of straight up physical violence if it came down to it. But I also would want that person to totally have the constitution of like, it is only a good night if I do not, use that, or like, I will not need to.
It reminds me of doing festival security for Android. And that was kind of like the thing. Like if somebody acted drunk and weird or was really high and tried to like touch all the paintings and stuff and like do weird shit, I had to like be like, I was the guy to get in conflicts because no one else wanted to. And so that was my job. But I had to do it in a way to where it was like, we're at a festival and everybody's high and they're here to look at art that's altering their consciousness and helping them like raise in their consciousness. So I have to be respectful of the environment while making sure that I get into conflicts when absolutely necessary. And it's an interesting balance to find. But again, it's like, I do genuinely think that every single human being does have this obligation to at least have the capacity
to defend in the most dire circumstances. I mean, I personally, like, when I think now about the prospect of myself, I'll say the first one that's a little less controversial, learning a martial art. I feel like that is a non-violent. I would be doing that for non-violence. Like it will be less likely that things will go badly, literally in the rooms that I'm in, if I am capable of disarming, or what's the word for just neutralizing. Yeah, if I can neutralize someone like, much larger than me, or somebody who has a weapon, like that's just better across time for if I'm having events or just anything. It's all around. I would do that for non-violent reasons. It's different when I think about owning and getting as good as I can with having a gun, shooting a gun. Because there's this thing, and I don't know if this is still like my hippy dippy upbringings that are happening, but there's this question that that I could come at from both extremes about, which is like, by having the gun, are you, I could say a word like manifest, but are you like
this is interesting because there's something martial arts gives you that a gun never will, right? Like a gun can often be an overcompensation for something that's lacking in your being. Whereas if you're a skilled martial artist and you really could, like if you're a living, breathing, walking weapon, and that, there's something in the way that you hold yourself. Because like most of the time we make snap decisions. Like I used to be kind of narcissistic. And so it was like, if there was like a girl that was like easy to kind of like hook up with because she had like low boundaries and low self-esteem or whatever, you can smell them out of the crowd. And if like bullies, like they just like know who to go to because they know who to bully and they know what to do and all sorts of stuff because you can just smell it. Like you know who to go to. Just like if you are a match for an unhealthy, toxic relationship paradigm, you don't think consciously about who's going to counterbalance your unintegrated trauma in the worst way possible and all sorts of stuff. It just happens naturally. You sniff it out and you're naturally attracted to it. Mm-hmm. And so when it comes for people to abuse or people to bully or people to oppress or things like that, and I don't mean on the government level of oppression, I mean like just like in your day-to-day level. But when it comes like who to take advantage of, the people who want to do that can sniff it out. And if you're a living, breathing, walking weapon with the capacity to do harm integrated into your being, they're going to look right past you. And they're going to look for the person who's like slumped over a little bit, who doesn't really hold boundaries, who doesn't want to get into conflict and just wants to be nice and all this stuff. And they're going to poke the fuck out of that person because they know nothing will happen in return. And a gun doesn't do that to you. You could be a complete limp noodle with a gun, and that wouldn't necessarily do anything. Whereas you could be a robust individual with character and internal strength, and that could even have somebody with a gun feel like messing with you is not worth it. And so for me, the intention is to be someone who's not worth messing with.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's also like, do I want to use the word projecting? Like seeding a community with that. Like, you know, this occurs to me at festivals, but nowhere much like Burning Man. And there was a year where I really confronted this at Burning Man and after Burning Man in ways where I think I scared some people verbally. But I was coming from I had observations at that Burning Man, and I host the spoken word open mic stage, and every year, there's it amongst the hundreds of people who come up and do 10, 15 minutes of talking or poetry. There's at least 1 to 7 I was raped at Burning Man stories.
Wow.
And then there's also some of these stories that are there's one of that the other host, Magenta, she tells this story as a PSA about like, hey, you're at Burning Man. Yeah, there's lots of free love. There's lots of like safety, and you can trust here in a lot of places. But also here's this story of when the LEOs, law enforcement officers, took a box of Rufalin from somebody was showing up. Like they seized somebody who was coming with intent to roofie many. Like he had a bunch.
Possibly distribute.
Yeah. So
that's the lowest form of drug dealer. If you sell roofies, like
yeah. So with these things now, so it's like that. Man, I want to finish on the Burning Man thing.
Yeah, do it.
Make sure that I finish on that. Hold on, I need to say this. It's like there's certain things like that where you become aware of certain evils in the world, and it's like I think that this information is so fucking heavy that for some individuals who I know aren't going to be a part of the find out who's doing it and fucking punish them publicly, effort. I almost would prefer them not to know, but not in the case of Burning Man, being careful at Burning Man, but in the case of like fucking Jeffrey Epstein shit, like that. I know I could list tons of people that in my life that are super, I think, doing their part as kind, intelligent human beings trying to improve their lives and perhaps the world. But I don't think they need to be thinking about that so much. Maybe, to be aware of it, I suppose, and like integrate it into like the range of what is possible in humanity, maybe. But for some individuals, I really think like it is almost, maybe it's part of the effort of the strong to like help shield them, maybe not from the information, but just the relevance. Anyway, back to Burning Man.
Yeah. Go ahead with the Burning Man thing.
So when I was at Burning Man this one year, it was just really hitting me heavy how much of that. And I had a time where I was tripping, and I was I tell you that I'm not going to tell the whole story again, but in front of the Orgy Dome, where Lindsay was working the door, and I came up and talked to her, and she's like, "There's this guy who's like, he's back again." And I went anyway. Long story short, my mind went on this whole thing because all these different things of like of how much of that has happened in the past at Burning Man. Not like an overwhelming amount, but a little every year, right? And it had me on this paranoid but also rooted in reality thing of that whenever there's a Burning Man, whenever there's a hey, there's gonna be a lot of freedom, there's gonna be naked people, it's gonna be like there's somebody who's like, oh, I'm going because there won't be there's nothing for me to there's less for me to worry about. They won't see it coming. They won't be able to there won't be somebody who will be that strong, that exactly what you're talking about, so I think that there's this effort to seed a community with like, yes, there is openness, yes, there is that we're always working towards safer, but if you fuck around here, somebody is going to fuck you up.
So there's on the Burning Man theme, there's because I like to go to sex parties, and I live in LA where there's a ton of sex parties, and or at least I used to before COVID. And one of the big things you notice there is there's certain crews that will put these parties together where it's very explicit that if you act up, you'll not only get kicked out, you're liable to get jumped. Like you might get the shit kicked out of you if you make a mistake. And so it's like, if you question whether or not you're up to caliber, it's like, don't go because you might get beat up or like some bad shit might happen to you. And I go there and I feel safe and I feel everything's okay. I can stay there all night and it's great. Don't really have any problems. However, there's ones that are a little more mainstream where they don't have that feeling and bad shit happens there. The people that, like, there's something in the environment where it's like you go in and you're going to a place where you act up and you'll get your ass beat, versus you walk into a place and you know that if you act up, like worst case scenario, you might make someone uncomfortable. A lot of weird shit happens at those parties. You just look at it. Like you look at like, okay, like you actually don't belong here. You've never come to these parties before. You're acting way too confident for somebody who's clearly never been here before. You're crossing all these boundaries with people you clearly don't know how to engage with this, and there's nobody here to stop you. And it's a completely different environment. And so that's why we need to reintegrate and maybe not even but begin to value like a certain level of savagery in our communities.
Well directed, well thought out, but capable of, you have to fear the burn. There's been a lot said about how deterrents aren't as effective as we'd like to think they are. But, metaphorically, heads on pikes does something.
Yeah, it definitely does. That's something more than not having heads on pikes.
Yeah. So with Vanetta says that's one major reason I've never felt safe to go to Burning Man alone. I would really like to say to that if anybody who's listening and they're and they haven't been to Burning Man, or just Burning Man has always been something that is just peripheral, and they have some very stereotypical simplified idea of it, because I have heard those. I heard one girl tell me that it's like, I think I'd be cannibalized. It's like Burning Man is one of the like okay, I'm not going to call it safe, but okay, so statistics. The statistics of Burning Man are there. Like they do a lot of work in census, and there's this Republican Politico guy, I forget his name. But anyway, he goes to Burning Man every year, and particularly what brought him there is because he was just the question of how does this city of 70,000+ have such little crime for 7 days? Like, how is it? So it's one of the, I still would hesitate to say one of the safer places, but that Grover Cleveland. No, Grover fucking, what's his name? Not Grover Cleveland. What's the fucking
not Grover Cleveland. No way is it Grover Cleveland.
What's his fucking name? Grover, is it Grover Nordquist? Grover Nordquist. Yeah, Grover Nordquist goes to Burning Man, and I know because I see him every year because he gives a talk or is a part of a panel in Center Camp, and there's a bunch of people because Burning Man is largely left.
Here's my thing: it's like, would Burning Man have such little crime if it was longer than a week, if it wasn't so expensive to get out there, if everything wasn't free once you got there, and it wasn't essentially just one big party?
Yeah, I'm not pushing back against that for that reason. I wanted to say that this very thing that we're talking about shouldering the burden of who's going to be the enforcer around here, is something that Burning Man works on every year and applies the information from last year. And I think something could be said. I think that there is a descending of those sort of crimes every year. And okay, I'll have to look into that. Okay, so that's a question. Like, what is like sexual assault like rates going down at Burning Man? I think that they would be. Because I think that every year they seem to be getting better at, there seems to be more of a thought out approach and a readiness to deal with that in this way where it's like, you try to solve the problem without involving law enforcement unless this level of crime is taking place, in which case absolutely cops. And that's something that I feel the need to say. So we're talking about shouldering the burden of difficult problems. And one of the things that I feel like is a way that this happens is you become aware of a problem, like police brutality in America. I feel like I personally have been aware of that problem for a very long time, but we had that and become a immensely focused upon issue, and particularly the racist element of it in June of 2020. And I felt like I could not fucking disengage. There was never a day where I wasn't like doing this churning, this mental effort to be like, where do I stand on the pragmatic part of this? Like, we can all agree there is police brutality. We can all agree that there is racism in America, but it's like, where is it? How does it live institutionally? But most importantly, what sort of moves could we make that will make it so that there's less police killings next year? And one thing that like through a lot of that churning and mental effort, which is I think a big part of the burden, like when I talk about my mom not knowing about fucking Jeffrey Epstein pedophile island, and it's like, and it not seeming necessary for me to be like, Mom, you got to be woke to this shit. You need to know what's going on. It's like, because what is that going to do other than just hurt her and upset and make the world a scarier place? I think you have to.
There's something there where. Okay.
So but I have to finish the law enforcement thing, because that's
do it.
The thing that I one of the things that I came out from that is that wherever you stand on, because there's some people saying abolition, and there's defund the police, and then there's just like we need to fix things that are wrong with the way law enforcement is currently happening. I think that, can we all please agree that if you stumble across something like a sex trafficking ring, or if you are aware that a rape has taken place, that you go to the motherfucking police with that? Because no matter how much you despise the institution, or you think that it's entirely rotten to the core, or all the things that people say that have realities to them, and obviously in different places, and nuance and stuff, but some people aren't nuanced. But even to the people who are like flat out, we need to burn every police precinct, even you, please take this thought in, that if you turn that punishment, the law enforcement machine, if you have it going after things that we can all agree need to be punished, that takes them off the beat looking around for people who are doing victimless crime stuff to punish. Like, and I really think that in terms of this stuff, wherever the Epstein trail, breadcrumb trail goes, or whatever's going on, the rabbit hole, wherever that goes, and just like knowing that stuff happens, that there is sex trafficking and whatnot, I do like the ones to address and defeat it are these people who are arguably like over resourced to be able to militaristically fucking fuck some shit up.
Yeah, and then the question from there becomes, who shoulders the responsibility of dealing with that?
Well, they decide to do that job. You know, you don't get
I mean, who bears the responsibility of dealing with the fact that that's how it is?
rough. That's a rough, like a lot of these times when there's something that's an important nuance like that, like, you know, I have numerous friends that I care about deeply who I just assume that a lot of them are totally on team defund the police or even abolition, you know, ranging from defund to completely abolish. And the difficult thought, like the nuances of that, are difficult thoughts to have. They are really difficult thoughts to have.
Extremely
difficult thoughts to have. They are none of them are light work. It's fucking I mean, it's essentially, you have to let your mind and heart accept that a necessary evil, like like I do regard some necessary evils in my world, and that's and one of them is there needs to be somebody who can fucking out monster the monsters.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that completely.
Out monstered like the demons. Like we need to have good monsters.
And that's where it's like, for me, I cannot allow that to go anywhere further than beyond me. As soon as I know that that's required, it feels required of me that I must be one of them.
And we're kind of okay, so not taking myself off the hook of doing, you know, maybe trying to do other things, but I think that you and I are doing that, you know, right now. And you know, a part that often weighs on my consciousness is and my conscience is, am I not doing enough to increase the range of my signal to say, to present important nuances and more, or what I think most importantly, like I think that we need to be exemplifying difficult conversation that is pragmatic and problem solving, that always brings you back to like, what can you do in your life, my friend? What can we do in our lives? And then when our house is in order, then, but not like that, not like once this, then that, but getting your house in order is part of helping the world. And I want as many of us who will accept that, that, you know, that burden, or just that effort, that quest, to be doing what we can to make our lives in the world better. I so do. But I think,
agree.
Yeah. So I think that we're doing our part.
I think we are too. And I think, like what you said about, like, are we boosting the signal enough? You know, like that? I don't think so. For me, the answer is no.
Same.
And this is where I kind of go back to, like, this is why I think like Jordan Peterson really outlines this better than anyone I've ever heard. And he's like, it's your own conscience. Like, it's just by your own standards, you're not doing what you know you should be doing. Like, it's not that there's some external thing saying like, you need to do this, you bad boy. It's like, no, inside, you know what you're supposed to be doing. Inside, you know what is required of you just to have a clear conscience. And if you're not doing what, at the very least, your conscience demands of you, then for me, it starts to bridge on the, like, are you even here? Like, are you even a person?
Yeah.
Or like, what are you doing? Because I can't really count you as here if you're not listening to your own conscience. You're off somewhere else doing some other disjointed thing that I don't really understand.
And there's just this body, this flesh robot appearing before the world, sometimes exuding its essence, but and it's more of a struggle to exude your essence and your behaviors the less you do it. And
then they form opinions from that disjointed perspective, and then they start to believe them, and then they start to spread them to other people, and it spreads like a goddamn virus.
The lies, like confronting, and that's the biggest. So it's convenient. It's convenient to designate a big general thing in the world that you would like to combat and spread. And we could say a lot about, you know, like never having the identity of anti something, because then your existence is predicated upon this thing that you say you wish to, you know, rid the world of or whatever. But lies. I am all right with being but maybe it's just better calling it more truth instead of anti-lies. But no, like let us root out the dishonesty within ourselves. Let us find at every level of society where lies are rampant and confront that with truth. Yeah, because I do think that is like a thing that kind of solves everything in different ways, because okay, so this is about the who bears this, the suffering, who bears the cross of like the world. Like there would be a lot less suffering in this world if there was a lot less rampant lying.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that. Like we can't, like we lie to ourselves about the, just the unnecessary, more societal problems that cause suffering in our own community. And sometimes we have a move. I think less and less about, when are the billionaires gonna have the right medicine where they have their Charles Dickens, Ebenezer Scrooge redemption moment, and they wake up the next morning and they're like, I am going to dedicate my life to using my wealth to lessen the suffering of others. I think about that less, and I think that's good. That shows spiritual development in me.
Mm-hmm.
If I may toot my own horn.
I would agree.
Where that energy used to go goes to, and sometimes this gets out of hand and it's like I'm pressuring myself to do so much, but how can I become more my full potential? And then maybe part of that is becoming wealthy, because I do think that if I had $1 billion, things would happen around here.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's part of the reason that I'm really into wealth accumulation right now. Like I'm trying to become wildly wealthy for that exact reason. But so it's like there's two different approaches here. I'm sure there's a bunch of different approaches, but the two main ones that occur to me and what you're talking about is like you could try and make it so that there's no more billionaires anymore and that no one's allowed to be billionaires, and like you do all that weird stuff that has everything to do with controlling other people. Or you could make their evil bullshit obsolete, which is what I would like to do. I would like to, which is like, this is where it comes from when you shoulder the burden of responsibility, where it's like, oh, you don't like Jeff Bezos? Make something better. Make something better. Like the only reason Amazon's doing so well is because it provides a really goddamn amazing service that nobody was providing before. And the only reason it continues to do so well is because we keep giving them money. Like that's how capitalism works. If somebody can find a really big problem and solve that really big problem for the least amount of money, you can bet that whatever it is they created to solve that problem is going to fucking blow up. Blow up. And if we were to take responsibility for that and look at the marketplace and say, all right, these are problems that everybody's suffering from. How can we resolve these problems? Which is like Lyft and Uber did. Like everybody, I lived in San Francisco when they came out, and they're from there. And the taxis sucked. They were way too expensive. They would sometimes drive right past you. They were rude. They would drive unsafely. The taxis just sucked. And then you had Lyft and Uber come along, and suddenly it was the easiest, most pleasant and affordable, just wonderful experience. And you got a job out of it if you needed a job, which I had one. And so
you drove?
Huh?
You were a driver?
Yeah, for Lyft and Uber before I started coaching. In fact, it was my car caught on fire, which is I lost my car, so I lost my job, which is why I went into coaching. It's a different story for another time. But to me, that made it really, really clear that it's like we can solve these problems. And we can solve these problems by creating, like I'm like my business. My business is profitable. It's making me money. It's making me a decent amount of money, and that amount of money is continuing to grow. And I created a business that solves the biggest problem I could think of. This whole thing about the collective shadow. And so I decided to take that on me to help people integrate their collective shadow and learn to understand it and have a positive relationship with it, because that's the biggest contribution I can make to the world. And I'm becoming profitable as a result of it. And so if my message spreads, which it has, I'm teaching other entrepreneurs this stuff and they're creating content about it. And so the message is spreading and rippling out, and from multiple epicenters from me, And so my intention is to keep that going as long as humanly possible and create the biggest ripple imaginable, so that people like Jeff Bezos, the shit that they do in order to get billions just doesn't work anymore. I want to create a world where that's obsolete. But those guys get away with it because we're kind of a match for it. If we're really honest, we don't care that much. We'd still rather have next day delivery for free than actually resolve these problems. We'd still rather not leave the house and just order this thing that we can find online rather than call around to a bunch of stores and look for it that way. Like the only reason these people are doing what they're doing is because they capitalize on our laziness and our desire for comfort and all these different things.
Yeah. And it could be said of the past. Let us say that we are not, this anymore. I know you and I don't feel this way, but it could definitely be said of the past that we were opening up a nice vacuum for there to be, what is referred to as like the elite, Illuminati, New World Order sort of thing. It's like, I was just thinking the other day about specifically the New World Order thing, that it's like, if I was a millionaire, billionaire, like high in the political ruling class, and it was 1950 through 1980 to 2000, I would be calling up my friends. I'd be like, we should have some plan. We should have it's probably best to be pretty not evil, sinister, amoral about this. I mean, immoral about this plan. But I think that council would be like, we should be pretty amoralistic because we need to be realistic about what we're trying to do, which is, no, I'm not saying particularly the New World Order anymore. I'm talking about my own like hypothetical. I would be like, we need to look at the world stage, at the fucking chessboard as it is. And we need to be like, over the course of decades, where is this going to go in a way that doesn't end in the nuclear annihilation of everyone? So we got to be working towards some sort of one world government. Like that has to be that has to come down the pipeline at some point, or at least something where the whole world is so connected economically and just like that it can never happen. Like that would need to be part of the plan.
I listened to an interview from the 70s or 80s. I think it's the 80s actually, where George Soros said exactly what you're saying now.
I haven't heard that interview, but that makes sense to me. See, this is the thing.
He said, like, because like he would destabilize countries and like destabilize their currencies and all these sorts of things. And he would say that there's two versions of him. There's like the angel and the devil version of him. And he says they're both the same person. And then so the interviewer goes like, well, don't you feel bad about disabling entire countries just for your own personal benefit and like for what you think is best for the world? And he goes, morals and guilt don't ever enter when you're committing amoral acts. And I was like, I mean, true, but horrifying. Because that's the interesting thing. Because when we talk about this, you've got like George Soros is either a wonderful world benefactor or he's an evil fucking next level Mr. Burns, depending on who you ask. And so that's why it's extremely important for not only us to bear the responsibility, but for us to get fabulously wealthy, like ridiculously wealthy, so that we're the ones with the money and we're the ones with the pull and we're the ones with the power and we're the ones that can do things.
Yeah. Realizing that is what helped me get to the place that I'm at now, where I would no longer call myself anti-capitalist. I think there's definitely things that need to change. I think there's regulations that absolutely it's like, whereas like 20-something-year-old me would say capitalism is evil. Now I would say there are things, there are mechanisms and symptoms that come from growth for the sake of growth, free market capitalism, that if they are not addressed, if there is not some sort of, ceiling and regulations, like, because we're not going to, it would be bad if we ended the planet because greed is good. It would be bad if that,
Fair enough.
So that's one. Okay. So, I want to go back on the New World Order, George Soros, elites thing, which is, I think that we really nailed something there, which is like, we are by the people who accept certain burdens of responsibility, not entering those arenas, we create a vacuum for just that. And they're going to be shitty. They're going to be shitty, and they're going to have shitty ideas because they're not us, and by us, I just mean like the kind, intelligent, trying to do their best people, or just elements amongst us. And somebody who is currently, not really I don't want to say something like awakened or enlightened or whatever, somebody who it is not currently part of their rubric or felt sense of responsibility to have things happen in a kinder way where there's less suffering, less unnecessary suffering, or like fucking just fucking of the meek sort of thing. Like that's something that you can develop. and I just think, like with him, I don't know much about George Soros, but it seems to me like what he seems to be is like he's thinking is he thinks that he has a responsibility to nudge things or just straight up shove things in the direction that he thinks would pan out.
Have you heard his story? It's really kind of interesting.
I know it includes the Holocaust, right?
Yeah. So he was a teenager. I think he was 14 when basically the Nazis came around to his neighborhood area and started rounding people up. And for whatever reason, he could pass as a Christian. He could pass as not a Jew. And so for some reason he passed, and he was given the opportunity to help the Nazis round up other Jews and take their stuff. And so he took it. He was like, cool, I'll do that. And the interesting thing about it is, because this is all in the interview that I was talking about, the interesting thing about it is he never felt any regret for it at all. He was like, this is just what you do to survive. Like, why would I feel guilty about this? This is just what you have to do. And so he was either already a sociopath or became a sociopath by being, subjected to this amount of extreme psychological pressure. And I can't diagnose him, but in order to do something like that and feel zero regret, you got to be at least mildly sociopathic. And so the only reason I bring all this up is because when you have somebody that lacks the capacity to feel remorse, even in a situation like that, and they have enough money to cripple an entire country's currency just by their buying habits, like, that really requires more of us. That really requires us to be like, oh, that's what's up? Like, literally, certain elements of the entire world stage are predicated on this guy's whims. Like, that will not do.
So I think we really found something here that my brain wasn't working with before. So I think we really did a good nonsensus about this, because there's two big prongs of this conversation, this question, who bears the burden of reality, that I knew I wanted to go into. Mm-hmm. And one is, are there some people who are gentle sweethearts who are raising children who don't need to know about, it's not even necessarily that don't need to know, they don't need to be ruminating about the horrors of the world. There's some horrible shit going on right now in the world. And I don't think that I need to make sure that my mom sees, footage of Saudi Arabia ravaging Yemen, I don't think that is what she needs to be taking in over her morning coffee. I think that me having an awareness of atrocities in the world does something that plants my feet in,
But I think about it like this, like, since my girlfriend's she's watching this right now, and it's like, I don't want her to have to deal with those things. I don't want her to have to think about that. But if push came to shove and she needed to kill a man to survive, I'd like to know she had the capacity to kill a man. Because if it's either have her bear at least the responsibility of her own survival versus losing her, I'd rather have that.
Yeah. I feel that way about have you seen those little keychains that are like their little cat ears? Mm-hmm. They're for gouging eyeballs out. Mm-hmm. And so first time I saw that, I was like, oh, that's horrific. And then my second thought was, I want several people that I love to have those on their keychain.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be a question of whether or not they have to pepper spray or gouge eyeballs out, and not whether or not they will be assaulted.
And then do both out of sheer caution.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is, and that is how I have planted myself in a reality where I look around and it's like, there are dangers in this world. There needs to be strength that is ready to react, and so the two prongs of this question, I think we did a pretty fucking good job of, and the George Soros thing, like, that really nails it. I'm really going to think about it a lot, because I think that the threat that we are faced with is, if not somebody intelligent and kind, then a sociopath.
Mm-hmm. That's the default, especially because of capital. Like, this has always been my critique of capitalism, is that it rewards and encourages sociopathic behavior. Like, you just will climb the hierarchy quicker and more efficiently the more sociopathic you are. The more you're willing to completely disregard how your actions will impact another person, you'll just win quicker, because you'll do shit other people won't do.
But that's the regulation that's exactly what I mean. I like, this is the way I look at it, is that it's like, capitalism could be the mode that takes us through to close to utopia or whatever. But instead of it being capital being the main word, it's caps. There need be caps, and you can't have it all, and you can't fucking be like, you can't be.
What do you mean you can't have it all?
You can't be causing wanton suffering. Okay, so now, I know what you're about to argue. I know what you're about to argue. If that it's not a pie, it's endless, and if it's not a pie and it's endless. But if there is a circumstance, which I see sometimes, where it is a pie, you can't have it all to the detriment of everyone else. Maybe that's something you want.
I don't know if that's the case, because that whole argument where people are like, oh, billionaires are just hoarding money. It's like, well, that didn't stop me from making any money. I was broke 2 years ago, and now I have enough savings. Like, I'm halfway to the point of where I could put a down payment onto a house in 2 years. Billionaires didn't stop me from accumulating wealth. Billionaires aren't going to stop me from accumulating wealth. Billionaires are not going to stop anybody from accumulating wealth. There's plenty.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing of that is that, if not somebody intelligent and kind who has, love in their heart for humankind, or just a better idea for the future, then it's going to be, Trump, Soros, Bezos. There's controversy about Elon Musk, but he has, wishes for humanity that are not,
and he's done objectively good things that none of those other people have done. Like, giving away the patent for all the Tesla stuff and keeping it cheap and all that sort of stuff like that. He set a lot of precedents for the fact that you could be better. Obviously controversial, still need to be checked out in some areas, but he kind of set a precedent for, like, okay, billionaires can be cool.
Yeah. And so exactly that. It's like, money or free market mobility, like, might end up being a part of the mechanism of how the people who are currently the elite are, one, no longer the elite, and two, maybe, like, exposed. And see, I'm not very punishment oriented, is the thing about me. And I realize that. So I realize that my morality is not the morality.
Mm-hmm.
I always tend to think that if we just need to stop, not that we just need to stop, but the most important thing is stop the bleeding. Like, to punish the stabber, and accountability is huge, but let's stop the atrocity. Stop the that's usually right.
That's why, like,
it is
old mafia days, like, you would, like, do something horrific to somebody to set an example.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, the punishment is the prevention. It's like, whoa, I really don't want that to happen to me, so I won't do that thing.
Yeah. So yeah. Oh, thank you. It really helps the world. My roommate has just given me a Starcut cider.
Starclit.
Sounds Starclit. That I'm making a song called Starclit. I promise to some degree.
Yeah, please.
as the kind and intelligent are stronger and less to be fucked with, this world will become a safer, more magical place.
And that is why those are the ones who will inherit the earth. Like those who have the sword and know how to use them but keep them sheathed. That is why they will inherit the earth, because nobody else can take it from them. Like, they will inherit the earth because they will create it. And they will kill, if necessary, those who would want to ruin it.
There was a moment, I think it was in Dave Chappelle's first stand-up performance since the pandemic, where in reference to the reaction to George Floyd, he said, "I trust the streets. I trust y'all." And I have heard my consciousness say that about like all of humanity, but sometimes in reactions to like what's going to happen in the long term, you know? And my y'all is like if/when, but let's call it when. And let's call when now. The kind and intelligent, you know, the ones who are here to help. Like when those humans all over the world are activated, and as they network and as they, you know, I probably more activated through catastrophe, sadly, but like when that Captain Planet Underground is fully activated and going, I trust that we will do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I hear somebody say, "I trust the streets," and I'm like, you trust them to do what? The fuck do you trust them to do? I don't trust anybody with anything. Not the wide collective. I don't trust them with a goddamn thing. Which is why I'm so passionate about shifting our collective values. Is I want to be able to trust the streets. I want to be able to trust the majority of people. But right now, that just occurs to me as the most horrifically bad idea I've just about ever heard.
To go forth with a confidence that the collective will solve it. We'll figure it out.
That's a horrible idea in my personal estimation. I can't imagine a worse idea, honestly. Because what has the collective done in recent history to even come close to demonstrating that they're worthy of that trust?
Over time, the arc of history is long, but
was it the collective or a choice of or a small select group of great individuals?
Yeah, well, I think a bit of both. I think that there is like I believe in that quote. I forget if it's bends towards the arc of history is long, but bends towards justice. Okay. That resonates as true to me. How long the arc is and who does the bending. I
think generally it's one individual that shows up every once in a while and sways everybody else to their way of thinking.
Yeah, I've you know, some turtles that I really think are really, really smart and really, really taking on the hard questions seem to have a lot of agreement about leadership is going to be a big part of it. And that we have a crisis of leadership. We have influencers, but not leaders. Man, so this is right back to we talked about this at the beginning of this NONSENSUS program. What does it look like for? I mean, you're already doing this. You're at least talking the talk, but I think that you have a special walk, and I have a special walk that involves a lot of talking. You know, so it's like, why don't you walk your talk? It's like, well, talking is my walk.
The ministry of talking walks.
Yeah, obviously you're like, you know, behaviors and you know, just how you're showing up in the world needs to be reflective or you know, in line with your talkings. But okay, so what does it look like for us to address the crisis of leadership? And when somebody says become leaders, yeah.
Like that's why this is why it comes back like to our conversation about individualism versus collectivism. Like this conversation perfectly encapsulates why I will fight to the death to make sure that individualism is the proper existential starting point for at least our society.
Yeah.
Everything we talked about right now is exactly why that is something I would give my life fighting for. Because that is the only way out of this, in my opinion.
Yeah. We didn't talk about the specifically the political arena too much. And and it's actually kind of great. There's 5 minutes left. And it's like that. I feel this way now, or I think and feel this way. Figure out who your champions are. Perhaps even get together with your community and name a champion who's ready to go into that coliseum. But like, I believe in representative democracy, yo. And I see Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard and a few others, but those are big ones for me of like that. I do think that those turtles Richie had a comment that I thought was really good metaphor. Asleep at the Mecha Gundam steering controls, like those turtles at the controls would represent me largely. Not to a T, they're not me, but they would large me. They would large me representatively, but a big important part. They're packing their brains all the time with what the political like chessboard looks like, the geopolitical chessboard, and are way more learned than I'm going to be in certain areas to affect. And so it's not like, completely disengaged from politics because there's somebody who's handling that. But I do think that it behooves you to at least figure out who your champions are and support them.
Yeah, and that's really good. Yeah, I feel like we can just end on that.
Yeah. But also be a champion. Be a champion where you can in your life, and maybe that's super duper tiny. Maybe that's, but who the fuck gets to say what's tiny or insignificant? God, if you're able to show up and be a good, name a relationship in your life, and you're able to be a good brother, cousin, sister, niece, aunt, fucking, coworker, fucking, roomie, both as an RUMI, as in like the poet roomie and like roommate, parent. If you're doing a good job at that, this world gonna get good stuff gonna happen here.
And at the same time, I do like, I want the weight of existential terror of not having done enough to turn people into diamonds.
Wow.
Like, yeah. I want that. I want you to suffer under your own existential weight of your own conscience of not having done enough so that can turn you into a goddamn diamond.
I'd step that back a bit and keep going back to this thing about these. There's some super special sweethearts that I don't think that they become diamonds. I think that it's good. I think I like what you're saying. And we've talked about anti-fragile versus robust versus fragile systems. And I'm about that life. I am just, okay, let me just put it this way. I'm not the one who comes and grabs a turtle by the ears and says, motherfucker, do you know? Like, do you know what
I'll be that guy.
You be that one.
Yeah, I'll be bad cop. You be good cop.
Can we say something other than cop? Okay. You be snapping turtle. I'll be magical turtle.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
That's pretty good.
So yeah. In conclusion, I think that the question of who bears the burden of reality and what plate you step up to, is a question you got to ask yourself. And the big important stuff is, God, that's complicated. But but I think it's a question to be asking and not cowering from.
Yeah. And with that said, ask yourselves these questions and answer them. Don't just ask them, answer them. It's not enough to ask them. Answer them. Answer them until your conscience is adequately soothed. Ask them until you feel good about yourself and the answers that you come up with. And then stop. And then and then don't stop. And then do those things.
Yeah, I thought we were going to talk about poverty more, but this was good. All right.
That's the perfect way to end. That's it. I'm done.
All right. This has been the NONSENSUS. Thank you, Chris Roscoe.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
The future's gonna be just as weird as now.